Hi folks, welcome back to another exciting video here in our project management series. We're going to talk about some project management stuff in business writing. Kind of dry, but extremely pertinent to what you're doing. For the most part, unless you wind up going to work for somebody else after you leave art school and continue your practice, you're going to basically be an entrepreneur. And so some of this basic stuff you need to know. And it all relates very nicely with fabrication because the processes are sort of similar. And so we're going to kind of merge all of these things together and talk about them all at once and leave you with some business writing and hopefully some interest in why your business writing skills matter. So here goes. Why are we talking about this? Art projects are projects, and therefore you artists are project managers. There's a whole branch of management science that talks about project management. And whether you like it or not, your projects all can be sort of filtered in through that prism of project management. And having some of these basic skills will make your projects go better, which is why we're talking about them. It'll also give you a better understanding of how the business world works. Everybody sort of interacts with the business world, but once you start getting into contracting, which you're going to be doing as a professional artist, you kind of have to understand a little bit of the basics of that contract stuff and the sort of the American business environments at large. And we're going to talk about some broad strokes on that. And then that will lead us into the business writing stuff. So here goes. Congratulations. You just got promoted to project manager. All your projects have to be successful, whether they're for you, for a piece that you're just going to try to sell somewhere, or if you're entering into an agreement with a gallery or museum to provide work for them. Your projects need to succeed, or you're going to be a flop. And that's all there is to it. So understanding the basics of project management will help you to succeed in your career. If you are running a large project that's not just you, with a camera and a computer and making some work, you are going to have to manage internal stakeholders, your employees, interns, what have you, and then also outside stakeholders in your project, like material vendors, galleries that you have to work with. And all of this stuff all has to get done on a schedule. You can't escape it. It's coming for you. I'm trying to help you succeed at it. So, something that does not get talked about much in art school, and I don't really understand why, is iterative design. Iterative design is sort of an overarching design process that most projects have to deal with. Project management is also an iterative process that is intended to produce continuous improvement in the outcomes of the projects and also the systems that are being used to create the projects. So we're going to talk about each of these phases: ideate, prototype, build, analyze, and then we're going to talk about how these connect to fabrication and some project management. So, ideate phase. This is most people's favorite phase of the project, where you are creating the ideas that you're going to use to build the project. So, key thing here, you must have an unlimited thought environment. No criticism at this phase of your project. A lot of people suck at this. A lot of people will criticize themselves. A lot of people will criticize others without really understanding that in the early phases of a project, it's not helpful. It definitely steers the process, and this is not the phase where you do that. You do that in the next phase. So be good to yourself. Imagine you are in a world where you have commas in your bank accounts and you can do whatever you want. This is how you should be thinking in this phase of the project. So you're going to define the problem here. This is why this is an important phase of the project. Defining the problem sort of sets the table for everything else that you're going to do. You're going to gather a lot of information here. Working with other people, having a network is extremely important for having successful ideate phases, I think. I work well alone. I have better work outcomes when I work with other people that I'm capable of interacting with in a productive way. That's what I mean by bullshitting in there. Talking your stuff over with other people who have good ideas will help you to come up with better ideas of your own. A lot of times my first viable idea is not the best possible solution for a design problem. You're going to learn a lot of stuff about missing skills and knowledge that you have. That's kind of the point. You should not enter into a project very often with all of the skills and knowledge that you need to complete it. Gaining that information is part of the whole process. Clients' ideas, if you're working for a client, I put their ideas last on the list because you'll get to them eventually, and they're often not good ideas. There's often better ideas, but at least if they're bringing you something, then you have an initial set of parameters to work from. Useful, but not the end all, to be sure. So prototype phase, this is an informal design phase. You're going to start doing your initial design work here. Sketches, scale models, little things that help you think about how you're going to solve this problem for your project. You got to fail in this phase a lot. Expect it to happen. Don't get emotional about it, if possible. Expect it to happen and make it happen fast. The faster you get to your failures, the sooner you get to your better ideas and your work starts getting better. This is also the phase where you're going to start hitting limits. Remember, you're in the unlimited phase in ideate, in prototype. You're going to start to have limits put onto what you can do in the work. Some of that's going to be skills that you don't have. Some of that's going to be materials, money, time. Any of those sorts of parameters are going to start to limit your outcome for the project. So then your build phase is where you actually start to make stuff. And this is where you're going to produce your output that goes to other people. If you're a photographer, build phase would be finishing your photographs, doing your post-processing, doing your prints. I'm not a photographer. I don't know what else you guys do. This is where you're going to hire with other people to produce work for them. So if you're sending stuff out to a gallery, you might consider this your build phase. If you're going to hire subs and vendors, you got to buy paper, got to buy mat board, you got to buy laser inkjet cartridges, all that stuff. That's happening here. This is also where you start getting into a lot of documents. You don't have a lot of documents in the earlier phases, but once you get to this phase, and if you're not working with some documents, you're going to be in trouble. So some examples of things you can work with are proposals and contracts that I've got in here. Those are categories that include lots of little sub-documents as well. We'll talk about all that stuff later on. So last phase. This is the phase where everyone says, that was a great project, let's move on to the next one, and then they skip this phase. It's a bad idea. It does take time. Everyone's moving fast. It's understandable that this gets kind of left by the wayside. Everybody does it. The better you are at following through on your cyclical process in your projects, the faster you're going to get better at whatever it is that you're doing. This is the part where you learn. You're supposed to be gathering information at the end of your project. Sit down, have a smoke, write your list of things out that went well on it, didn't go well on it, and try to figure out how you're going to get better on the next one. You have to be a leader. All those sort of lame leadership skills that we talk about in business school, at least. I don't know if you guys ever get exposed to any of that kind of stuff. It matters because you're kind of on an island. You're an entrepreneur, and you need to make your stuff work. No one's there to help you. You don't have a support system in place, probably. You're just on your own. You have to make it happen. So take this part of the process seriously, and you will get better faster. No doubt about it. You don't gain the knowledge when you don't document things. Even if it is just sitting down and taking the time to say, that project was awful. Why was it so awful? And make a list of the stuff so that it becomes real. When you write something down, it becomes real. You'll remember it better. Lots of science around that. Just the act of writing something makes you remember it, and you will learn more. This is also the part where you should do a cost analysis. If you do a job and you get hosed on it, you need to know why. You can't just get emotional about it and forget about it and try to do better the next time, work harder or whatever. That's not usually the problem. The problem is usually specific, and you should figure out why that problem happened and try to solve that specific problem. So all of that comes out of your analyze or iterate phase at the end of the process. So when you see someone who has a brilliant idea, brilliant, successful project, and it looks like a stroke of genius, like a lightning bolt just struck them in the head and out came this piece of work, that is almost always fake. That is almost always the result of people grinding away many times, going through it, making the same piece of work over and over again and having it be shitty, and then eventually getting better as they iterate on it, and that's what you see at the end, and it looks brilliant. So just understand that this whole process is going to be dirty, and it's going to feel like failure almost the entire time, and try to remember that that's how it's supposed to be, and fight through to the end. So in fabrication, all of this same stuff, we've got all of these cycles going around. You're in the middle of a project right now, which makes this sort of an interesting time to do this lecture. Normally we do this at the beginning before you're ever in the lab, and then we try to make you sort of follow the process through. But in this time, everything's backwards in this class. So you're kind of neck deep in the prototype phase right now, all of you, and hopefully getting to the build phase this week and next week. So the way I look at this, fabrication all sort of falls in there, but I think of it in these buckets. So we've got, I'm going to flip through some slides. Design, procurement, fabricate, install. This is also how I break down my estimates when I'm doing a project, because to me these are sort of the big buckets, and then I'll detail my individual projects inside of these with design. I'll have time spent doing my sketches, sitting down with a cup of coffee and doing my brainstorming, and then doing my 3D models if I'm doing that, researching some materials so that I can write a coherent proposal letter that includes all the materials that I'm going to use in the project. I'll think about install, because if you don't think about the end at the beginning, then you are going to wind up having problems at the end. And if possible, if I have time, I like to go through and come up with a couple of different ideas, especially when you're, like, I work as a contractor, and I need to be able to give at least one good idea to the client when they ask me for a quote, so that they can tell that I am thinking about their project and I'm capable of pulling it off. So I got to do a few of these, and a lot of times this iteration process is just me laying awake at night, sort of building things in my head, thinking about how parts work, and realizing that I have problems in my designs and stuff, and that's my iteration process. It's useful working time, even though it just kind of feels like obsessing about things that I can't actually work on yet, or things that I'm not going to get paid to design, unfortunately. So that's your design phase. Procurement phase. Procurement, if it's not a word you use in your normal lexicon, is buying stuff. You got to find your vendors. You got to see if you can find stuff at a reasonable price. Can you get it on time to get the project done? It's always a great idea to work local if you can, because local people care about their local reputation, and they care about that more than the reputation in Alabama. And you can get better performance out of people. Also, being able to walk into somebody's place of business and look them in the eye and ask them why they're screwing your project up is an extremely effective thing to be able to do. And you can't do that when they're in Alabama, unless you want to, go to Alabama. So, materials, standards that you have to meet, all that stuff you'll start to deal with in the procurement phase. This is where you'll start to have budget pressure. Can you buy all of the stuff for the budget that you have for the project? Sometimes you will wind up iterating more in this phase. So looking at our chart right here, notice that we have all of these arrows. There's my little pointer. We got all of these arrows down here. Every one of these loops back around. And the reason why is as you go through here and you're trying to do this project, you are going to find that you run into problems along the way that force you to step back in the process. Let's say you designed your whole thing around a fabric that is no longer available. Company went out of business. COVID killed it. And now you've made an agreement with somebody to make them a, custom, sofa. And you can't get the fabric that you promised them. Now you got to do something else. You got to go maybe quote the job again or find a new fabric or something. And you're iterating at a late stage of the project. You want to avoid this if at all possible. You want to have more iteration at the early phases and the late phases because your projects go way smoother that way. But it's unavoidable. It will happen. Fabricate. This is usually the smallest part of the process. I break my stuff down into cut and shape, join, and finish because those things all are sort of different tools, different blocks of time it takes to do all that kind of stuff. You're going to think through all of your order of operations here and make everything flow as best you can and get the work done for the smallest amount of money. And then you're going to install it. There's a lot to think about in installation. We'll talk more about the your specific stuff. I think we're trying to get Andrew to talk to the class again, like we normally do. We'll talk about some gallery installation concerns, but all of your typical types of install problems all need to get accounted for in your schedule, in your estimate, so that you don't wind up getting hosed on this. Access. So many people have problems with access. You design a project to go into a gallery. The gallery has 10-foot ceilings and it's 15 feet and it looks big, but it has a 6-foot wide door that you have to go through, and all of a sudden your stuff doesn't fit into the room. That kind of stuff happens all the time. You don't want that to happen to you. So why should you care? Again, even if you're not going to fabricate stuff yourself and you're going to hire people to do it for you, having all the basic information and communication skills, having the jargon that people use, being able to communicate with, sketches and drawings is super valuable. And then your basic knowledge that you have about fabrication processes will help you to do all of this stuff, to do the drawings, to communicate, and get your vendors to perform for you. So it's still worth understanding this stuff, even if you're not going to fabricate stuff yourself. Having a little basic knowledge will make you feel more confident when you're talking with your vendors about how to do this stuff. So, some concepts. Risk. Risk is something that colors everything with the business writing. Basically, the whole reason that we have contracts is to protect everybody from the risks. You create defensive mechanisms. You create conflict resolution mechanisms. All of that stuff is there to assuage people's concerns, mitigate risk, and allow business to take place. So this is a list of some types of risk that you will invariably encounter. I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of these, but these different types of risks are things that you should think about as you are doing work, especially if you're going to get into doing like public art contracting, something like that, which we're going to talk about towards the end of the course. Understanding the risk, finding ways to avoid the risk, finding ways to shift risk onto other parties, is all connected to the price of your work, to how much money you make, and how successful your projects are going to be. Doing a good job with this is extremely important. Um, so let's talk about a couple examples of risk. Oh, I deleted some slides. Sorry, I guess I'm freewheeling here. So price risk. Let's say you're buying a material that has a volatile price. Um, you are going to produce 50 inkjet prints, and the price of printer ink has been crazy for the last couple of years. Conflict minerals are out of control, and ink is through the roof. There's no way of understanding exactly how much your cost is going to be to produce these 50 prints because of price volatility. That's a price risk that you are going to have to assume unless you somehow manage to pawn it off on somebody else or make a plan to buy a bunch of ink and hoard it for the course of the project. Design risk. If you are designing a project, it has to work. And if it doesn't, it's your fault. And you're going to have to either redesign it or rebuild the project or any of that kind of stuff. They make insurance products specifically for this that you can use to cover this risk, which have a cost that you need to account for in your projects, et cetera, et cetera. Schedule risk. Vendor risk and schedule risk are sort of interrelated because usually when vendors screw you over, it screws up your schedule. Occasionally vendors can screw you over on price too. All of this stuff happens. Understanding who is responsible for this risk and making sure that you're planning for it, either by allotting time or allotting money to cover this risk, is very important. And then payment risk, that's one that you're definitely going to deal with. You're going to enter into agreements with people. I'm going to provide some art. You're going to provide me some money. And then you're going to provide the art, and they're not going to provide the money. If they don't pay you, that is your payment risk, and you just got hosed on it. There's lots and lots of examples of this. Be aware that it's there. Understand who you're doing business with, and if you think they're risky, make sure that you're going to get paid. You can do that through smart business writing. You can do that through your pricing. Allotting money to cover risk is something that everyone should do when they're doing estimates. So enough about risk. Let's keep moving. Contracts. All of you are going to be contractors one way or another. If you're going to show your work in a gallery, they're going to make you sign a contract, and you're going to work under that contract. It's imperative that you get a little bit of understanding about basic contract law. It's not hard to understand. You already have lots of experience with contract law because anytime you buy something, you're dealing with it. Even if they don't even hand you a receipt, like there's a contract that just got executed and fulfilled. Understanding how this works is important. We can talk about this later maybe. If you have specific questions about it, feel free to ask me. I know a little bit about this. Some key things in your contracts. Define dates. A lot of times the dates are the thing that people fight over the most. Don't agree to dates that you can't meet. You're going to have a lot of milestones along the way as you're doing your contracts. If there are interim dates that you need people to do stuff for, interim dates you need people to meet for you, make sure those get defined in your contract. Payment terms is huge. Understanding how this works will make or break your business and your ability to pay your bills. A lot of times you'll see a contract that says something like net 30 days, meaning 30 days after you present an invoice, they agree to pay you. This is important to understand. Sometimes people don't pay attention to this and they think, I'm going to do the work, finish it all up, clean up my stuff, and then they're going to hand me a check as I walk out the door. Most businesses don't work like that. You need to be able to float the cost of this for wherever that net period is on your contract. Pay when paid is illegal in Massachusetts. Don't get duped by this. If you're working for someone, they say, hey, I'll pay you when she pays me. That is against the law in Massachusetts. They have to pay you according to the agreement. They cannot wait to be paid by somebody else. Make sure that the schedule of payments works for you. Most people will be flexible on this at the beginning because they don't anticipate problems. So fight for this at the very beginning. Don't try to fight for your money later on. Okay, so business writing. We've spent all this time talking about this so that you can understand who your reader is when you're talking about business writing. If you are a person who is in business for yourself and you are looking to hire some young artist to do something for you, you are going to think that that person is a risk. They're young, they're inexperienced, they're enthusiastic, and you want to work with them, but you don't know if they know what they're doing. So you have a job to do as the business writer. You need to change people's opinion of who you are and what you are capable of doing. And your writing is a fantastic tool for doing that. You can totally transform how you are perceived by producing good written work. If I'm sitting there and I'm a gallery owner and I'm trying to decide if I want to do business with someone, and they send me a document that looks like trash, that has a ton of grammatical errors in it, doesn't reach the basic threshold of business writing competence, I have every reason to believe that every other part of my interaction with you is going to be as shitty as the document that you spent that time to send to me. So that is your first impression a lot of times, is this document. So you have to make it work. Best advice, be brief, have goals, don't include anything in your document that does not address those goals. Get your facts right and be in command of the situation. So, going through this, being brief, don't explain things to a degree that is unnecessary. Being very simple. I'm used to a lot of technical writing, and so it's sort of natural for me to cut all the fat out of stuff. But most people are not like that. There's a lot of, I see a lot of young people when they're writing try to explain all of this stuff, and it's like, it's just extraneous facts. Get to the point. Make sure that the points that you are making are the points that matter to you, not just, stuff that you can say, but make sure that it actually works towards your goals. And don't include anything that doesn't meet your goals. If the facts in your situation are not in your favor, it is a much better choice to omit the facts that paint you in a negative light than to make up facts. A lot of people don't realize that that's not a way to win. The person who has the facts on their side wins usually. So be in the right when it comes to, being truthful. And if you do all of this stuff, you get to control this situation. A lot of times, especially I see this in public art requests for proposal all the time. And when I'm doing my own work for private clients as well, the situation is undefined. It's very vague. It's difficult to understand, what's going to happen in the, transaction in the future, because there's limited information. You'll have a very vague idea about what's going to happen, what's being asked for. And because of that, it's confusing, but it's also an opportunity to define this situation. And that's what I mean by be in command. Like, you can create the beginnings of the contract by writing a good proposal. You can force the person receiving your business letter to respond to everything that you have just written. And by doing that, you're controlling the high ground in the relationship. You don't have to be savage about it, but understand that that's what you're doing, and make sure that you take advantage of that opportunity. So, writing a letter. They're always going to be the same. Every single one of you on your hard drive should have a business letter template. If you have a letterhead that you work with, letterhead should be on it. You can even set these up to sort of autofill, where it just automatically dumps today's date in it. All of that stuff. So basic components, you got to have a date, you got to have the recipient, the address, You have to address them. I can't remember what this thing is called. I want to call it a salutation or something. Dear Ms. Blank, must be at the top of the letter. You got to say dear. Everybody gets weird about leaving out the dear, even though it feels like totally insincere. And you don't do that in an email, and that's how we all communicate, So it feels weird, but you got to include the dear. Your sign off, I go with sincerely, always, because it can do everything. It can be mean, it can be bitchy, it can do it all. I just stick with sincerely all the time. You must sign a business letter. Never, ever send a letter without a signature on it. It doesn't say anything positive about you or what you're saying or add any credence to what you're doing. So, how do you write? How do you write a letter? If you don't have the ability to just make this stuff flow out of your fingertips at the keyboard, sit down, grab a pen, write down your goals for the letter. I have had to do this with difficult letters in the past. When you're in a tricky situation, especially when you're in the wrong and you need to fight your way out of it, listing your goals, coming up with some ideas about how to achieve those goals will help you to kind of get rid of some bad ideas, things that don't help you win the situation. And then take all of that stuff from your list and make those the topics of your paragraphs in the letter. Start out with something simple. Write something stupid, like, I want you to pay me money. And then build off of that. Rework your topic sentence. Throw in a little bit of support. Your paragraphs don't have to be long. It's very common in business writing for a paragraph to be 2 sentences. You don't have to provide a lot of information. Just make sure that what you provide supports your topic, supports your overarching goal for the letter, and then, just get right to the point. And then always close it. I am a big believer in having a strong closing in a letter, and I have had great success writing effective letters like that by making sure that you hit somebody hard at the end with your point. It doesn't have to be aggressive. It could be cheerleading for yourself. Talking about how great you are. Don't sell that short. So let's look at a business letter. Here's a letter. Names have been changed to protect the stupid. This is my letter to Joe Blow at Joe Blow Energy Co. This is a real situation for a real police station that I worked on. Ran a $10 million police station project, and there was a fuel tank that had to be removed from this project. And so we hired this contractor to get rid of the tank, and then he vanished. He stopped returning phone calls, wouldn't return an email. His vendors started contacting us directly and tried to get us to pay his bills because that's what he told them to do. And so the problem with this was we needed to get a document from him in order to close out with the DEP this contaminated soil, I think it was, and tank removal. And so he didn't even give us the paperwork, so we couldn't close this out. And it was turning into a big problem for us because we wanted to do things right and document everything for the DEP. So I wrote him this letter, and eventually we got it taken care of. So your key points: date, name of the person this is going to. This is going to be the same name down here, Dear Mr. Blow. You got to have the name of the company if the guy's representing a business, and then their address. You have to have a one of these two. You don't have to do both. I am not a fan of doing both. But when you're working in an office and you're writing a lot of letters all the time, you'll have all of your letters for the police station will all say regarding Arnhem Police Station, and then we'll have subject, payment and documentation of tank disposal. So
Your subject will change every time. Your regarding line will be everything regarding this project. In practice, I don't do this. I just do one, and I'll say Arnhem Police Station Tank Disposal, and I'll call that my regarding line and just delete that. So, my opening paragraph here is just a statement of facts. And then down here, I tell him what this statement of facts is forcing us into doing. And then I give him action. You always want to close a letter with an action for the person to perform for you. I'm writing this proposal for this public art project. I can't wait to do this project for you. Please call me anytime. I can't wait to hear from you after your proposal review process with the committee. Sincerely, always have to have a closeout. This block right here is for my signature. I do that in Acrobat, not Word. Name, title, etc. So they're very simple. There's not much to it. Writing an effective one takes practice, but if you get the basic parts of this wrong, you are going to be on your heels dealing with the recipient of this letter for the rest of your business dealings with them. So don't let that happen to you. So back to the slideshow. Proposal letter. So I talked about this a little bit. A lot of times your proposal letter can determine how your contract gets formed. Sometimes your proposal letter becomes the contract. I actually write my proposal letters that way because I don't want to do a big contract process, and I know enough about how the contract law works that I can defend myself well enough without having to pay a lawyer a couple $1,000 to write me a big long contract. Nobody wants to read and sign a big long contract anyway, and so if you can handle that, your letter proposal letter, people call it both things, can actually be the contract. So in the letter, you gotta identify all of the key points of the contract and include and exclude those in the blocks, and I'll show you that in a second. When you respond to another document with a proposal, make sure that your proposal is complete. So what I mean by that is they are going to put together a proposal request. You're going to write a proposal letter back to them in response to this request. You should address every single thing that they identify as a concern in that letter, because the reason that it's included is they've identified it as a risk, or they've identified it as a design point, or they've identified it as like a basic parameter that they want you to meet to pre-qualify to bid for it. You need to have done 3 jobs of a similar size before they'll consider you for this contract, that sort of thing. Do it in the same order that they list it in the request for proposal, so that it's very easy for them to take one document and the other document, line them right up, and they will see that you have responded to all of their concerns. And then when you do this, it makes it easy for everyone to understand. And remember, this is not being received by one person sometimes. It's going to be received by a group of people, or it's going to be received by one person, and they're going to look at it for 2 seconds and then come back to it again a month later, maybe sometime after that. If they have a hard time understanding what you've written, they're not going to feel very good that they have to go and retranslate your proposal letter multiple times over the course of this process. Make things easy for the reader, and they will respect you more. So your big project management concepts that we've been talking about: schedule, cost, risk, and quality. We haven't talked about quality very much, but don't worry about it. That's sort of connected to like the materials selection stuff that I was talking about in the fabrication section. You're going to produce something for the client. What is it going to be like? Is it going to be a tinfoil sculpture, or is it going to be a polished, welded stainless steel sculpture? That's what I mean by quality in there. So I think that's my last slide. Oh, one more. Your proposal doesn't have to be a letter. All the concepts that we just talked about have to apply. That has to make it into your document. But your document does not have to necessarily be a business letter. This is something that I find foreign because I'm used to a formal business environment, as you can tell by my sweatshirt. where everything gets done with form documents. You do a project that includes 100 letters, thousands of document changes, that kind of thing. I'm used to that environment, but that isn't necessarily the best way to do it. I work with someone off and on as of this summer who does her proposals as PowerPoints. And she takes her PowerPoint and outputs it to PDF, puts 2 slides on a page, and then sends the PDF and the PowerPoint to the client. So if the client wants to say, hey folks, we're having a committee meeting, check out this proposal. And they can throw her proposal right up on the projector and actually engage with everybody at the meeting. Kind of a clever idea. Same thing sort of goes with doing a video. As long as you've got the content in there, think of, doing your script for a persuasive video like writing a business letter. It needs to have all of the same kind of thing. Address the recipient, their concerns, all that kind of stuff. If you're doing a portfolio for a specific project or a specific job that you're applying for, all of these same concepts will apply. So I'm going to show you a proposal letter that I should not have put that person's name in there. Sorry about that. Whoops. Sorry, Mr. Arthur. So anyway, here's a letter. Thought I already had this cleaned up. Sorry. Same idea. Date. I had the guy's name, but I just deleted it. Regarding pod proposal. He wanted me to make him a pod. I don't think this job's going anywhere. I don't think I'm sharing any information here, which is of any interest to anybody. But thank you for the opportunity. This proposal is based on the design brief. Here's the scope of work. No bullshit. Just get right to the point. They want a price. They're not going to read this anyway. They're going to go like this. They're going to go down here and look at the price, see if it's reasonable, and then they're going to come back up here and start reading the letter. It's shocking how often people don't read the letters. They just skip to the parts that matter. It's just like going through resumes. They say your resume gets 30 seconds in front of an HR person before it gets thrown away, or whatever. That's just how people read. So I try to break this down, make it easy to understand. Scope of work, bold text. Here's my design points. The reason that I put this stuff in here is because all of this is going to become terms in my contract. I am not going to say I'm going to make you a custom seat if I've already said I've priced this as an off-the-shelf seat where I don't have to custom make anything. That's cheaper. So, that's why I'm going through laying out all of this information. So I quoted this 2 different ways. Quoted it as a simple prototype, and I also quoted it as a luxury prototype. So this has some different stuff. This has custom seats, for example. I need to call out this specific stuff. So for each one of these, I excluded all of the same stuff. I'm not going to install it. I'm not doing climate control. I'm not doing soundproofing. I am not providing millions of dollars of design and fabrication work by McLaren. They sent me some example stuff that they were thinking about matching, and it was done by these professional automotive designers who created this super sexy pod, but I can't do that. I'm one guy, So interior lighting, not included. Talked about schedule because they want to know. Like if I say, yeah, I can do it in 2022, that's probably not going to work for people. You need to tell people that you can make it happen. They didn't provide me a lot of information, so I didn't say I could meet their date or whatever. So I just kind of wrote a little text in there. Gave the pricing, gave the payment terms in big bold text to make sure that people know I intend to get paid. A schedule of values is sometimes a useful tool to help people to understand how I'll expect to get paid. It's important on bigger budget projects so that people understand that you're not trying to get too much money up front on a contract. We can talk more about that if you have any interest. So again, thanks for the opportunity. Look forward to discussing this with you further. Probably should have put that little action statement in there instead of, being passive there. That's not my finest hour. Sincerely, signature, and we're done. Didn't get this job, but I've gotten lots of jobs using this same format. This is my basic format. I took my letterhead off just to make this scroll better. The file's too big and it bogs down Word for some reason. That's pretty much it. So that's what I have to say about business writing for the time being. So thanks for watching, or not, whatever. We'll see you in class.